Welcome to Technology Simplified, the monthly podcast that goes around DFW and talks about technology and its impacts on business. This month we're here with Wayne Sueltz from Genesis 10 to talk about IT staffing. So Wayne, thanks for joining us and talk to us a little bit about what is Genesis 10 and what do you do?
Right, great. Well, Terrence, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come out and visit and talk a little bit about my passion in the staffing industry and a little bit about Genesis 10. Genesis 10 is really an IT staffing company. We specialize largely in IT project staffing, so anything around an IT initiative that requires additional staff, specifically around, I would say, 4 verticals: project management.
Okay.
We have a strong expertise in project management staffing. Anything that falls into an analysis type vertical, so business analysis, systems analysis, quality assurance, technical vertical, which is anything on the mainframe and distributed development side, both front end and back end, and then a 4th vertical around network administration, network infrastructure management.
So Wayne, talk to us a little bit about the IT staffing. I think some people understand what it is, understand what the market's about. But talk to us about what kind of models do you employ? So you do kind of staff augmentation. If I'm an IT manager, I need additional staff. You can give me additional staff. What are the various models that you employ? How do you do business?
I think it's a great question because I think our industry over time has changed, in my opinion, dramatically over the last 10 years. And I think if you really look at our industry, I would say that there's probably 2 models that are fairly common in the industry. One would be transactional staffing, right? For you to approach a vendor, you'd need 1 to 10, 20 resources for a defined length of time. And it's a fairly commoditized business today as we look at vendor managed systems and the process becomes a little less personalized. It's really more transactional staffing, right? So I would see that as one model, and I think there's a lot of vendors in that space that do a really good job at what I would call transactional staffing. So if you look at that, I would think on one side of a continuum, and on the other side, you have your largely outsourced vendors, companies that take large scope initiatives, not simply 1 or 2 staffing deals, but it's a large outsourced initiative. It's large in scope, both budget and resource-wise. They're long duration. The work will take place sometimes onshore, sometimes offshore, nearshore, and they're high dollar type deals.
So let's talk about one thing that has been big in the industry, or what we've seen, is outsourcing. So we've seen outsourcing and how that's affected in the migration of jobs offshore to India and nearshore to Brazil and Argentina and places like that, China. How has that impacted the marketplace? How has that affected business over the last 5 to 10 years?
I'll talk to that in a minute, but okay. I think there's a couple of misconceptions around outsourcing in that I think there's a fear about outsourcing that jobs typically leave the country. That's going to impact my role, your job, my team's job, and I think there's a strong fear around that. I think the reality is that there's a small percentage of jobs that are outsourced, nearshore, offshore.
Okay.
But I think what it does do is that it's the heavy lifting work that gets outsourced. So it really means that resources onshore have gone through a retooling process. For our business, our project management and analysis piece has really grown as a result of that outsourced model. Because as we've seen, a lot of the development work, a lot of the quality assurance testing get outsourced to an offshore location. There's been a strong need for strong project management, business analysis, because I don't think that offshore is really well.
All right, so I'm sitting in a meeting this morning and I hear a buzzword. And I was going to ask you about what is service-oriented architecture? The SOA. It's this. I hear it's this growing movement, and I just heard about it this morning. That there's really a push for that. Can you fill in the gaps as far as what they're talking about versus IT as a sort of project-based department versus IT as a service-based department? Is that kind of your convergence? Is that sort of the same thing?
Yes, it's funny that you mentioned it because I came out of a meeting last week with a customer who said we have a big service-oriented architecture initiative underway. And I think what you're going to see is, especially in service-oriented industries, very similar to what we're in, right? Because we're providing services, or we're in a service-oriented industry, is you're going to see customers walk away from IT departments as cost centers more to service-oriented IT departments, so that IT executives can demonstrate at the boardroom table that they are a strategic contributor to a business.
A lot of what y'all do on the consulting side is get inside the business side to find out what they really need on the business side, versus trying to just take existing technology and throw it at it and say, well, we can staff, this type of developer, and we think this is the product. Yeah. It's really getting in there and finding out what's really going to serve them.
I think the strong differentiator is that it really is service focused. So we provide a full service life cycle, if you will, to our customers. And the first part of that is it really is important to go into a customer and spend time and understand their business, right? So oftentimes in that transactional model, where you would simply sit down with the customer and say, do you need any staffing needs? In our convergent model, our business executives or our account executives go in and spend a lot of time trying to understand someone's business, and at least to establish a fair understanding of our customer's environment. And as a result of that, we're able to drive service, right? Because we can come back and say, you know what, we've done due diligence on this piece. We really spent a lot of time understanding your business, challenges, projects that are coming up, budget constraints, business constraints. We're trying to understand the business side and the IT side. We sit down with our customers, and as they're driving IT initiatives, trying to understand the purpose. Is this initiative driven because it's a profit initiative? Is it a customer service initiative? What is the business really looking for? And once we have that fair understanding of a customer's business, we can come back on a project and say, you know what, we've done the back end of the service delivery, and that is, we've really understood what our consultants are looking for. We're here to enhance their careers. We understand their resumes. We know what their hopes and aspirations are. We're here to drive their success, because really in our convergent model, our consultants are as important as our customers are.
I watched layoff after layoff of permanent employees, and I stayed there as a contractor.
Right.
And it was, it was one of my first experiences, but I sat there and I noticed, I'm like, okay, well, it's easy for them to tell me to leave. They got to pay this guy severance.
Yeah. Right.
But yet I'm still on. And I'm wondering, how much of the decision making is based upon the ease of that, or is it still goes back to the relationship and also the quality of the contract?
Well, yeah, I think it's a combination of all those variables, right? I think contracting, to talk to Terrence's point in terms of the business drivers, right? I think there's always going to be a strong need for IT staff augmentation.
Sure.
Because there's a strong business driver for it, and I think there's a sense of flexibility in that. Now, I agree with Terrence, and that is, you obviously don't want to be contractor heavy, right? But I think there's a good blend, and projects are going to drive what those resource needs are. And I think it does create flexibility. I think companies, as they go through these changes, I think over the last 10 years, our concept of stability has changed too, right? Where I think 10 years ago we'd look at stability, people coming into corporations would be there for a long time, or assume that they'd be there a long time. I'm full-time, so I have a sense of stability, and today I think people understand that the concept is relative, and that when contractors come to a company like Genesis 10, they know that they have the best of both worlds, that they've got the stability of being employed with a good-sized company, reputable reputation, first-rate benefits, and yet they have the flexibility of going from one project to the next.
Yeah.
Strong match. So we've got and then our customers have that sense of ease of, as projects change and as organizations change, I've got that flexibility of being able to step up or step down and adjust. And I think people like that scalability. I think in IT, you want to know that you've got that flexibility, that you can ramp up or ramp down as needed.
A lot of people have left IT and to go into other industries. And now I've heard there's actually an IT shortage onshore, that people are having a hard time finding qualified, and maybe that's technical and business skills, like you were talking about, or that well-rounded IT employee, or the project management, or the type of their focus of what they're doing. But the place of jobs that they're trying to find here, there actually seems to be a shortage. They're trying to find, it's hard to find the qualified candidates onshore in IT. I mean, what's been your experience in the marketplace and resources?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think our customers say the same thing, and then internal, as we're trying to find qualified resources too, we experience the same thing, and that is there is a shortage, but it goes back to the same thing. Is I think the profile has changed. So whereas before you could simply go and find a person to sit down and do an in-the-box technical type skill, now customers are looking for, or employers are looking for, a more well-rounded type resource. So I think there is a shortage, and I think there's going to be a shortage for a long time. I think the work that's been outsourced, I think in the last 10 years, you can start to see how the outsourced model seems to rotate from geographical location to geographical location driven by cost. So the last 10 years, you start to see the Indian offshore model become less cost attractive.
Why do you think they're reaching out to you to try to manage those employees instead of trying to hire them back directly?
Well, I think it's because of the flexibility. I think they see them as a temporary fix
to their problem.
To a problem. Okay. Whether that's an IT problem or a human resource problem, whatever it is, they see it as a temporary need. It gives them flexibility where they can say, we need him here for 3 months because we anticipate that's how long the knowledge transfer will take, or we need him here 6 months because that's what the scope is on the project. And sometimes they come back and say, we need the senior resource 35 hours a week or 30 hours a week, or so that flexibility that they get through utilizing a company like Genesis 10 gives them that scalability. They can ramp up, ramp down in a moment's notice without having to go through all the HR issues that you mentioned from an HR perspective. And a lot of times, when they've gone through a severance process where they've laid a lot of people off, there's a bunch of issues around that, and they'll say, look, let's just bring them back as contractors. We don't know how long we're going to need them. And that gives them that flexibility or that scalability to ramp up, ramp down. And I think that's why they reach out to.
Yeah, it's a painful process, right? The hiring, firing process, very expensive and very painful.
What makes you different than, say, going to work for another consulting firm who has just as good a relationship? I mean, how do y'all answer that question? When you got developers, you say, trust us, come in, see what we're about, and
Harry, I think one is there's a lot. It's a very competitive industry, right? So there's a lot of players in our, when I say in our industry that do really well. So when I talk about our space, I talk about the convergence space. I don't see a lot of competitors in that space, and I think when consultants come in and they sit down and meet with us, and a lot of times people are surprised, right? When we tell them we really, really value you. The fact is, I need for you to come in and visit with me before I even talk about an opportunity with you.
Right.
Because you don't even know that you're going to like Genesis 10. We don't know that you're a good fit for our customers. So we start building those relationships like we do with our customers. It creates a proactive model. And as our recruiters are constantly touching the resources that fall into their technology sector, those candidates in the industry start to realize, and Genesis 10 is following up with me, even though I'm on a project or I'm not looking right now. They're constantly touching base with me. And then once you have an opportunity to participate in a project and you realize that we've already done due diligence in trying to create a strong fit for you, and that the wages market to above market, that it's a really strong environment fit and you feel that you'll be treated equitably, most of our consultants, I would say 99% of them, stay with us a long time.
Hey Wayne, thanks for joining us this month, and I appreciate you coming out and talking to us. And that's all we've got for today.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks. Appreciate it.